Right now, as you're watching this video, 7 different companies are making money off your data, and you're not seeing a single penny. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this might be the biggest theft in human history. Every time you scroll through Instagram, search something on Google, or even just walk past a smart billboard with your phone in your pocket, you're creating something valuable. Data. Your data. And here's the crazy part. The data is worth billions. Literally billions of dollars. But who's getting rich? Not you, not me. The tech giants. The corporations. The middlemen. They built entire empires on something that belongs to us. And somehow, we just accepted it as normal. But what if I told you that's about to change? What if the next big revolution in technology isn't about smarter AI or faster computers, but about something much simpler? You taking back control of what's yours. Stick around because what's coming is going to flip the entire internet upside down. Let's start with a story. In 2018, a guy named Alexander Kogan created a simple personality quiz app on Facebook. You probably remember these. Which Disney character are you? Or what does your birthday say about you? Harmless fun, right? Wrong. That one app didn't just collect data from the people who took the quiz. It also grabbed data from all their friends without asking. Without permission, 87 million people had their personal information harvested. And where did that data go? To a company called Cambridge Analytica, who used it to influence elections. Real elections with real consequences. When this story broke, the world freaked out. Mark Zuckerberg had to testify before Congress. Facebook stock tanked. People were furious. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Facebook wasn't doing anything illegal. This wasn't a hack. This wasn't a breach. This was just how the system works. And it's still working that way today. Think about your morning routine. You wake up and check your phone. Maybe you look at the weather app. That app now knows where you are, what time you wake up, and what kind of weather concerns you. You scroll through social media. The algorithm tracks what you look at, how long you look at it, and what you skip. You search for a new pair of shoes. Now 5 different companies know your shoe size, your style preferences, and how much you're willing to spend. You haven't even gotten out of bed yet, and you've already created hundreds of data points. Each one is a tiny piece of information about who you are, what you want, and what you'll do next. And each one is worth money. Here's how much money we're talking about. In 2023, the global data broker industry was worth over $250 billion. That's just the brokers, the middlemen, the companies whose entire business is buying and selling information about you. Companies you've never heard of. ACXIOM.Epsilon. Oracle Data Cloud. These companies have profiles on pretty much every adult in America. They know your income, your political views, your health concerns, whether you're pregnant, whether you're getting divorced, whether you're struggling with debt, and they sell this information to anyone who'll pay for it. Insurance companies, employers, governments, marketers, anyone. But the really big money isn't with the brokers, it's with the platforms. Facebook's parent company Meta made almost $117 billion in 2023. Alphabet, Google's parent company, made over $300 billion. Amazon pulled in over $500 billion. And here's the kicker. A huge chunk of that money comes from one thing: your data. Google doesn't charge you to search. Facebook doesn't charge you to post. YouTube doesn't charge you to watch videos. So how are they making all this money? Simple. You're not the customer. You're the product. Advertisers are the customers. And what they're buying is access to you. Or more specifically, access to incredibly detailed information about you that lets them target you with scary accuracy. Let me give you an example of how precise this has gotten. A few years ago, Target figured out a teenage girl was pregnant before her own father knew. How? They tracked her shopping patterns. She started buying unscented lotion, supplements with magnesium and zinc, a large purse that could double as a diaper bag. Target's algorithm put it together and started sending her coupons for baby stuff. Her dad saw the coupons and got angry. He went to the store and complained, "Why are you sending my daughter ads for cribs and baby clothes? She's in high school." The manager apologized, but a few days later, the dad called back. "I owe you an apology," he said. "There's been some things going on in my house I wasn't aware of." She's due in August. Target's algorithm knew his daughter was pregnant before he did. That's the level of surveillance we're living under, and most of us have no idea it's even happening. Now you might be thinking, okay, but so what? I don't really care if companies know what I'm shopping for. I've got nothing to hide. I hear this a lot, and I get it, but here's why that thinking is dangerous. First, you might not care now, but you don't know how the data might be used against you later. Maybe you Googled some health symptoms. That information could affect your insurance rates. Maybe you like some posts about a protest. That could affect whether you get a job. Data doesn't disappear. It builds up. It creates a permanent record of who you were at every moment of your life, and you have no control over who sees it or how they use it. Second, even if you personally don't care, the collective loss of privacy affects all of us. When companies know everything about everyone, they gain incredible power. They can manipulate what we see, what we think, what we buy. They can sort us into categories and treat us differently based on those categories. They can predict our behavior and nudge us in directions that benefit them, not us. This isn't conspiracy theory stuff. This is documented. Facebook literally ran experiments where they manipulated people's news feeds to see if they could change their emotions. They made some people see more negative posts and other people see more positive posts. And it worked. They published a paper about it. They changed people's moods just by controlling what they saw. And they did it without asking permission. Third, and this is the big one, it's your data. You created it. It came from your life, your choices, your behavior. Why should someone else own it? Why should someone else profit from it? Imagine if someone followed you around all day with a video camera, recorded everything you did, and then sold that footage to whoever wanted to buy it. You'd call the cops. You'd call that stalking. But when companies do the exact same thing digitally, we call it a business model. So how did we get here? How did we end up in a world where our personal information is being bought and sold without our knowledge or consent? The answer is actually pretty simple. We gave it away. Not on purpose, not because we're stupid, but because we didn't have a choice. Back in the early days of the internet, everything was free. You could create a website for free. You could email for free. You could search for free. It seemed amazing, but nothing is really free. Companies needed a way to make money, so they turned to advertising, and to make advertising more effective, they needed data. The more they knew about you, the better they could target ads to you. And the better they could target ads, the more money they could charge advertisers. It was a beautiful business model for them. At first, it was pretty basic. Websites would track what pages you visited on their site. Maybe they'd remember your username. Nothing too invasive. But then they got more sophisticated. They started using cookies, little bits of code that follow you from site to site. They started buying and selling lists of email addresses. They started connecting different pieces of information to build bigger profiles. And then social media happened. Suddenly, people were voluntarily sharing everything: photos, locations, relationships, thoughts, feelings. Companies couldn't believe their luck. People were just handing over the most intimate details of their lives for free, in exchange for the ability to share cat videos and argue with strangers. The genius of social media is that they convinced us that we were the ones benefiting. We got to stay connected with friends. We got to share our lives. We got to express ourselves. And all of that is true. But what they didn't tell us, what they buried in 50-page terms of service agreements that nobody reads, is that we were also giving them permission to own everything we posted, to analyze it, to sell it, to use it however they wanted, forever. And once the dam broke, there was no going back. Every app started demanding more permissions, access to your contacts, your location, your camera, your microphone. If you wanted to use the app, you had to say yes. Most people just clicked allow without thinking about it, because if you didn't, the app wouldn't work. So it didn't really feel like a choice. Here's where things get really interesting. For the past 20 years, this has been the way the internet works. Free services in exchange for your data. And most people accepted it because they didn't see an alternative. But something is changing. People are waking up. They're starting to ask questions. They're starting to realize that maybe this isn't a fair trade, and a whole new movement is being born. It's called personal data ownership, and it might just be the next big revolution in technology. The idea is simple. Your data should belong to you, not to Facebook, not to Google, not to some data broker you've never heard of. You. And if someone wants to use your data, they should have to ask for permission. Real permission, not buried in a terms of service agreement. And if they want to make money from your data, you should get a cut. You should be able to decide who gets access to what. You should be able to see what data has been collected about you. You should be able to delete it if you want. You should be able to take it with you if you switch platforms. Basically, you should have the same rights over your digital information that you have over your physical property. This might sound radical, but it's already starting to happen. Europe passed something called the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. It went into effect in 2018, and it gave European citizens a bunch of new rights over their data. The right to know what data companies have on them, the right to correct it if it's wrong, the right to delete it, the right to move it to a different service. Companies had to get explicit consent before collecting data. They had to explain in clear language what they were going to do with it. And if they violated these rules, they could be fined up to 4% of their global revenue. That's billions of dollars for big companies, so they took it seriously. California followed with the California Consumer Privacy Act in 2020. Other states are passing similar laws. The momentum is building. The laws are just the beginning. The really exciting stuff is happening at the technological level. Developers and entrepreneurs are building new tools that put people back in control of their data. These tools are built on something called blockchain technology. You've probably heard of blockchain because of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. But blockchain is about way more than just digital money. At its core, blockchain is a way of storing information that's decentralized instead of one company owning a server with all your data on it. The information is spread out across thousands of computers, and it's encrypted so that only you have the key. This means no single company can control your data. They can't sell it without your permission. They can't change it. They can't lose it in a hack. It's yours, truly yours, and you can grant access to it on your terms. There are already companies building on this idea. Brave is a web browser that blocks ads and trackers by default. And if you choose to see ads, you get paid in cryptocurrency. You're literally getting paid for your attention. Solid is a project started by Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the World Wide Web. It lets you store your data in a personal pod that you control. Apps can request access to specific pieces of information, but only if you allow it, and you can revoke that access anytime. Ocean Protocol is creating a marketplace where people can sell their data directly to companies that want it. Instead of Facebook taking your data and selling it without asking, you decide what data to sell and how much you want for it. These projects are still early. They're not mainstream yet, but they represent a fundamentally different vision for how the internet could work. An internet where you're in control, where your privacy is the default, not something you have to fight for, where if someone makes money from your data, you get your fair share. Now, let's talk about what this means for the future, because this isn't just about privacy, it's about power. Right now, a handful of companies have more power than most governments. They control what billions of people see, what they read, who they talk to. They shape public opinion. They influence elections. They decide what's true and what's false. And they have this power because they control the data. If people take back control of their data, that power shifts. Suddenly, Facebook can't just decide what shows up in your feed based on what keeps you scrolling the longest. They have to ask what you actually want to see. Google can't just track everywhere you go and sell that information to advertisers. They have to offer you something valuable enough that you choose to share that information. This forces companies to compete on value again. Right now, once you're locked into a platform, it's hard to leave. All your photos are on Instagram. All your contacts are on Facebook. All your files are on Google Drive. Switching would mean losing all of that. But with personal data ownership, you can take your data with you. If Facebook does something you don't like, you can move to a different platform and take all your posts and photos with you. This makes companies work harder to keep you happy. It makes them treat you like a customer instead of a product. It also creates entirely new possibilities. Imagine if you could pool your health data with thousands of other people and sell it to medical researchers anonymously, securely. You'd be contributing the science and getting paid for it. Imagine if you could train an AI on your personal data, your preferences, your habits, your goals, and it would work for you, not for advertisers. It would help you make better decisions, find better deals, avoid manipulative content. It would be your AI working in your interests. Imagine if social media actually belonged to its users, not as a cute slogan, but literally. The users owned the platform, decided how it worked, shared in the profits. This isn't fantasy. It's called a data cooperative, and they already exist in other industries. Credit unions or financial cooperatives owned by their members. Rural electric cooperatives provide power to their member owners. There is no reason the same model couldn't work for social media or search engines or any other digital service. But here's the challenge. Making all of this happen requires a massive shift in how the internet works. It requires new technologies, new laws, new business models, and most of all, it requires people to care. Because the companies that currently control our data aren't going to give up the control willingly. They're going to fight it. They're going to say that personalized advertising makes the internet better. That free services won't be free anymore if they can't use our data. That privacy and convenience can't coexist. Some of these arguments have a grain of truth to them, but they're also self-serving, and they ignore the fact that there are other ways to build a sustainable internet, ways that don't require treating people like products. The good news is that people are starting to care. Every year, there are more news stories about data breaches, more scandals about how our information is being used, more people deleting Facebook, more people switching to privacy-focused alternatives. The tide is turning, slowly, but it's turning. And when enough people demand change, change happens. We've seen it before. In the early 1900s, factories could dump whatever they wanted into rivers. There were no environmental regulations. Then people got sick, rivers caught on fire, and citizens demanded change. Now we have the EPA and the Clean Water Act. Companies can't just poison the environment anymore. We decided that wasn't acceptable. The same thing can happen with data. We can decide that what's been happening isn't acceptable. We can demand that companies treat our personal information with respect. We can support laws that protect privacy. We can choose products and services that put us in control. And if enough of us do that, the market will follow. Because at the end of the day, companies want our business. If we make it clear that privacy matters to us, they'll give us privacy. If we demand data ownership, they'll build systems that support data ownership. But this isn't just about individual choice. This is about collective action. Because your data doesn't exist in isolation. It's connected to other people's data. When Facebook builds a profile on you, it's using information from your friends, your family, your co-workers. When Google tracks your location, it's building a map of where everyone goes. When Amazon analyzes your purchases, it's predicting what everyone will buy. Our data is interconnected, so protecting it requires us to work together. This is why regulations matter. This is why we need laws that set a baseline for how companies can use our data. Not just in one state or one country, but everywhere. Because the internet doesn't have borders, and companies will always find the path of least resistance. If they can collect data without restriction in one place, they'll do it there and find ways to use the data everywhere else. We need a global standard, a digital bill of rights that says certain things are off limits. You can't collect data without consent. You can't sell data without permission. You can't discriminate based on data. You can't use data to manipulate or deceive. These shouldn't be revolutionary ideas. They should be basic human rights in the 21st century. And here's the thing. This isn't about being anti-technology. It's not about going back to some pre-internet golden age that never really existed. Technology is amazing. The internet is amazing. AI is amazing. These tools have improved our lives in countless ways, but they can be even better if they were built on a foundation of respect for the people using them. Imagine an internet where you don't have to worry about who's watching you, where you don't have to read through pages of terms and conditions trying to figure out what you are agreeing to, where you can trust that the platforms you use have your best interests at heart because they actually work for you. That's the promise of personal data ownership. And it's not some distant dream. It's happening right now. The tools are being built. The laws are being passed. The movement is growing. But it needs more people. It needs you. Because the companies that profit from the current system are incredibly powerful. They have armies of lobbyists. They have billions of dollars. They have teams of lawyers and engineers and marketers. The only thing more powerful than that is millions of people saying enough. Millions of people demanding change. Millions of people refusing to accept the status quo. Let me tell you about one more thing. The real reason this matters. Beyond the money, beyond the privacy, beyond the power dynamics. It's about dignity. Every piece of data about you is a piece of your life, your thoughts, your relationships, your health, your mistakes, your dreams. That stuff is personal. It's intimate. It's yours. And you deserve to have control over it, not because of some abstract principle, not because of economics or politics, but because you're a human being and your life belongs to you. The idea that corporations can take the most personal details of your existence and turn them into profit without even asking you, without even telling you, without giving you anything in return. That's not just wrong economically, it's wrong morally. We're living through a moment where we get to decide what kind of future we want. Do we want a future where a handful of companies know everything about everyone and use that knowledge however they see fit? Or do we want a future where people have power over their own information, where privacy is protected, where data is treated as something valuable that belongs to the person it came from? The technology exists to build either future. The laws can go either way. The outcome depends on what we choose, what we demand, what we're willing to fight for. This is bigger than any single company or app or website. This is about the fundamental architecture of the digital world we're building. And that world is going to shape everything. How we communicate, how we work, how we learn, how we make decisions, how we understand ourselves and each other. If the world is built on surveillance and manipulation, we're going to get a dark future. But if it's built on ownership and control and respect, we're going to get something better. Something that brings out the best in technology and the best in humanity. So here's where we are. For the last 20 years, we've been living in a world where our data was something that happened to us. Companies took it, used it, sold it, and we just accepted it because we didn't know any better or because we didn't think. We had a choice, but now we know better. And we do have a choice. The next tech revolution isn't about smarter algorithms or faster computers. It's about something more fundamental. It's about taking back what's ours. It's about building a digital world where people come first, where your data belongs to you, where your privacy is protected, where you're in control. That revolution is starting, and you get to be part of it. The question is, will you? Let's dig deeper into what's actually happening with your data right now. Because most people think they understand it, but the reality is way more invasive than you probably imagine. Take your smartphone. You probably think you know what it's tracking. Your location when you use maps, your contacts when you use messaging apps, maybe your photos. But the truth is so much more than that. Your phone knows how fast you're moving, which tells it if you're walking, driving, or sitting still. It knows how you hold your phone, which can reveal if you're left or right-handed. It knows how long you spend on each app, which tells companies exactly what captures your attention and what bores you. Your phone's accelerometer and gyroscope can detect tiny movements that reveal your emotional state. Are you fidgeting? You might be anxious. Are you making sudden movements? You might be angry. Researchers have found that they can predict depression just by analyzing how people interact with their phones, how often they check it, what times of day, how long they scroll. Your phone is essentially a psychological profiling device that you carry with you everywhere. And all of that information is being collected, analyzed, and monetized. Here's something that really blew my mind when I learned about it. Your data profile doesn't just include things you actively do. It also includes inferences, guesses about you based on patterns. If the algorithm sees that people who buy certain products also tend to have certain political views, it'll assume you have those political views even if you've never expressed them. If it sees that people in your demographic with your shopping habits tend to be in a certain income bracket, it'll categorize you that way whether it's accurate or not. These inferences become part of your permanent record, and they affect how you're treated, what prices you see, what opportunities you're offered, what content you're shown, and you can't correct them. Most of the time, you can't even see them. Companies consider these profiles to be their proprietary information, their trade secret, so they don't have to show you what they've determined about you, even though it's based entirely on your behavior, even though it affects your life. This is what people mean when they talk about algorithmic discrimination. The algorithm makes decisions about you based on data, but that data might be incomplete or wrong. The patterns it finds might be spurious, and even if the patterns are real, using them to treat people differently can reinforce existing inequalities. Let me give you a concrete example. In 2016, ProPublica investigated an algorithm used by courts to predict whether criminals were likely to reoffend. The algorithm was supposed to help judges make bail and sentencing decisions. It analyzed factors like age, criminal history, and employment status. Sounds reasonable, right? The problem was that the algorithm was much more likely to incorrectly label black defendants as high risk compared to white defendants, even when controlling for other factors. The algorithm was biased, not because someone programmed it to be racist, but because it was trained on historical data that reflected existing racial disparities in the criminal justice system. Garbage in, garbage out. Now apply that same logic to all the algorithms making decisions about your life. The algorithm that decides if you get approved for a loan. The algorithm that decides if you get called for a job interview. The algorithm that decides what price you see for airplane tickets or hotel rooms. All of these algorithms are trained on data that reflects all the biases and inequalities of the world we live in, and they can perpetuate those biases at scale automatically, without anyone even realizing it's happening. This is one of the biggest dangers of the current system. When your data is controlled by companies, when the algorithms are black boxes that nobody can see inside, when decisions are made automatically based on patterns and data, you lose the ability to challenge those decisions. You lose transparency, you lose accountability, and you lose fairness. Personal data ownership helps solve this problem. If you control your data, you can see what data is being used to make decisions about you. You can question it, you can correct it, you can demand explanations. You become a participant in the process instead of just a subject. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention: the mental health impact of living under constant surveillance. Because even if you don't consciously think about it, the fact that everything you do online is being watched and recorded affects you. Studies have shown that when people know they're being observed, they behave differently. They're less willing to take risks, less willing to explore controversial ideas, less authentic. This is called the chilling effect, and it's happening to all of us, all the time. Think about the last time you searched for something and then hesitated before hitting enter. Maybe it was a medical symptom you were embarrassed about. Maybe it was a political question you worried might make you look bad. Maybe it was just something weird or silly. That moment of hesitation, that's the chilling effect. You're self-censoring because you know someone might see. And even if rationally you know that nobody's really paying attention to your individual searches, the fact that they could is enough to change your behavior. We're all walking around with a little voice in our heads asking what will they think, and that voice is making us less free. There's also the psychological impact of being constantly, marketed, of having every single interaction optimized to manipulate you into clicking, buying, sharing, engaging. It's exhausting, and it's making people anxious and depressed. There is a growing body of research showing that heavy social media use is correlated with mental health problems, especially in young people. And it's not just because of cyberbullying or social comparison. It's because these platforms are designed to be addictive. They use the same psychological tricks that casinos use: variable rewards, infinite scroll, notifications that trigger dopamine hits. They want you to stay on the platform as long as possible because the longer you stay, the more ads they can show you, the more data they can collect. Your attention has been turned into a commodity, and these companies are strip mining it. They don't care if it's good for you. They don't care if it makes you happy. They care about engagement metrics and revenue. This is another reason why personal data ownership matters. If you control your data, you can choose platforms that aren't designed to exploit you. You can demand better experiences. You can vote with your feet, and companies will have to compete on making products that actually improve your life instead of just extracting value from it. Let's zoom out for a minute and look at the bigger picture. What we're really talking about here is a new kind of economy. For most of human history, economic value came from physical things: land, gold, crops, manufactured goods. Then in the 20th century, we shifted to a service economy. Value came from what people could do: knowledge, skills, labor. Now in the 21st century, we're shifting again to a data economy. Value comes from information, and specifically, information about people. What they want, what they do, what they'll do next. This is why data is often called the new oil. It's the most valuable resource in the world. It's what powers the biggest companies. It's what drives economic growth. It's what gives nations strategic advantage. But here's the key difference between data and oil. Oil comes from the ground. It belongs to whoever owns the land. Data comes from people. It should belong to those people. Right now, we have a system where a small number of companies extract data from billions of people and capture all the value. It's like if one oil company somehow owned all the oil in the world. That wouldn't be a free market. That would be a monopoly. And we'd break it up. That's essentially what we need to do with data. Break up the monopolies, redistribute ownership, create a more fair and competitive market. Some people call this data dignity. Others call it the data as labor movement. The idea is that when you produce data, you should be compensated for it. Just like when you produce physical goods or provide a service. Your data has value. You created it. You should benefit from it. This isn't just good for individuals. It's good for the economy. Right now, most of the value created by data flows to a handful of mega corporations. If that value was distributed more broadly, it would flow through the economy. People would have more money to spend, more power to invest, more ability to start businesses, more economic security.